Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Octant Community Meeting. Today is April 8th, 2020, and per usual, we get a bunch of things regarding the upcoming release that we want to talk about, and then we have an open Q&A, so if you want to add in something to the open Q&A, please do so in the HackMD that I'll link in the chat there. And with that, I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to hand it over to Wayne.
Thanks. Yeah, so exciting. We have another release coming up here. This was kind of, so we made the decision to, so I'll give some backstory on this. We have been working on the navigation, the new navigation, which has landed in master. And as we were working on this over the past few weeks and releases, there's been some outstanding issues with some persistent volume stuff, and we fixed just a handful of bugs that were kind of blocking people. So we made the decision to go ahead and instead of doing another like an 11.2, we made the decision to go ahead and just merge in the updated navigation, merge in some new features that Brian Lyles had been working on, and myself and Sam had been working on, and we got all those things merged in, and we decided we're just going to cut an 0.12 off of master because there was so many new things. So today I just kind of wanted to highlight some of those new things, and then I'm not maybe at the end we'll do a demo of the new nav, I think, but I'll have to. I don't know the state of my Octant, and I don't know if anyone else has it up and running right. So it's what my Octant is doing is always iffy, but it will.
I can do that at the end. I have it running. I think.
Excellent.
Oh, I can make it running.
So yeah, the updated navigation, that was all done. That was work that was been going on for quite a while. It was done by, so Sam took a first pass at this a while back. There was some issues with just in the functionality that we needed, not in what the work that Sam did, but just in the way Octant needed to navigate and present information. So we kind of had some deeper discussions about it, and then Milan and Ross and Sam all just basically went back to the drawing board and came back with a similar view, but with kind of an updated way that it all interacts and works. And the result of that is what you're going to see after we go through the kind of the notes here. But it is it's a whole new navigation experience. We've kind of moved that namespace thing back out, and so it's always visible, and we just it really has cleaned up a lot of what's happening when you're navigating and moving through Octant. It has created it has removed some of the issues with the vertical spacing of the navigation, and issues with it stacking really high, especially when you get into lots of custom resources. It's all around, it's just a much better experience for everyone using it. So we're super excited to have that in, and I want to give a huge thanks to Milan and Sam and Ross for all of their hard work on that. It's been going on for a while, and it's been a lot of I hesitate to use the word bike shedding because they were important points, but it's been just a lot of back and forth, and so it's really great work. So I really appreciate that. And then I wanted to call out this one. A few people have hit this one. So we added in the persistent volume listing PVCs and PVs into the 0.11 release. And there was some issues that kind of fell out from that, specifically around all the different types and all of the different, unknown types, types that we weren't considering. And Sam did a great job of resolving this by going through and putting all the types together in a case statement and making sure that we were rendering things out correctly to avoid all of these panics that folks were running into the first time they tried to use the persistent volume viewer. So most of that, I think all of the outstanding PVC bugs have been resolved in in current master, which will be 0.12. So I want to say huge thanks to Sam on that. He attacked those really quick and got them done. So The other two, the next three are all kind of, they're not tied together specifically, but they do all impact plugins in a way. So I wanted to highlight them. Brian added the ability to create grid actions, which are actions. So for those who don't know, Octant has this concept of actions. An action is really just the ability to tell Octant that you have a custom handler that you are going to set up so that when somebody does something on the front end, clicks a button, usually in that case, clicks a button, that your handler will be mapped to that button that is clicked, and the payload data that you've mapped out for your action will be sent into that handler. So before, the way to do that was you always created a button group, you inserted a button, the button had an action, and then the action name was mapped to your action's callback handler. Now, and in grids, that didn't look very good. You always had this, you had this grid, and then you would create a null, you'd create an empty header for the table column, and then you would insert buttons into it. And if you had multiple actions, you ended up with multiple buttons, and it never worked or looked right. It functioned, but the essence of what people wanted to do wasn't there. So Brian went and added the grid actions, which are stackable. So when you add them into a grid, you get this menu on the left-hand side that has the three dots. And when you click that, you will see all of the actions that have been inserted into the grid the grid actions for that row. And so it's a much cleaner way to get in actions and multiple actions into per field, like per row in a whole set of data in a table. So that's really convenient. And it's something that we'll be taking advantage of throughout the application as we start to do more kind of enhancements and modifications to our interface. But it's also something that plugin authors can now take advantage of as well. And then in a related note, we went through and we namespaced all of our internal events and actions in issue 820. And what that means is before they were just kind of the name. Actually, Jonas, if you could pull up 820, that would be, yeah, and just go to the files changed. So if you look at what was there before, we just had these really generic strings like event type, add filter, clear filters, remove filters, right? So this is the event type up top is an example of in a test that was an event. And then you can see there, like on the screen now, we have all of these internal event types that are namespaced with event.octant. The idea here is that in the future, when people are writing plugins and they're creating actions and have their own events that they're going to trigger and their own actions as a result, we want to make sure that there's not conflicts, but we also want to be able to document and give people an easy way to potentially handle internal, like add special cases to handle internal Octant events if we ever make that possible. Right now, there's no way to really route those events through to plugins, but we are looking at ways to do that specifically around things like when the namespace changes. Right now, plugins don't really get informed when a namespace has changed. So the ability to have a plugin register itself with a handler to listen specifically for event.octant.dev / I think it's namespace, right? That allows us to create simple documentation that's clear, that is easy for developers to kind of understand what their event is watching for when they come back and look at it later. And it also prevents us from conflicting with existing authors and plugin things, because it's very likely that you might want to write something and call it, namespace. So then in your case, it would be, my plugin dot, whatever, v1 / namespace or something. So it's a small little internal change. I don't think, Sam pointed out that this potentially breaks plugins if there is anyone who is attempting to use our internal actions. But I don't know of any plugins that are doing that currently, and I haven't seen anyone talk about it. And I think there would be a lot of hoops to jump through currently to kind of do it anyway. So it's not like they would have to go dig through the code, find the thing. And anyway, so I don't think anyone's doing it, but their namespace now, which will make things much easier. And then finally, Brian, when he created the grade actions component, he also wanted the ability to create objects, which we've had an outstanding issue for a long time. It was, I can't remember, but it has come up and been part of the plugin API for an extended period. It's just no one had taken the time to do it. Brian needed it for something he was working on, and so he did it. So now we have the ability to create objects via plugins, as well as internally in our store, but also via plugins. So that's a great addition as well. And that's what's kind of shaping up for 0.12. We have some other things that are going to be landing, some other like minor like fixes and issues, and those will be available in the full changelog when we cut this release. I think right now the plan is to cut this early next week, Monday, Tuesday, something like that, based on kind of where PRs are and the health of master and how things are looking as we test more. But I think we're pretty confident that we'll be able to do that early next week.
Awesome. Any questions, comments regarding this? Tons of great stuff coming into the next release.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And with that, Milan, if you want to give a quick demo of the latest nav, that would be excellent.
Sure. Let me try to share my screen. All right. I hope you can see my screen. So
yep.
This is the brand new navigation. As Wayne mentioned, we put a lot of effort into this and it went back and forth a few times. And as you can see, navigation is totally on the left now, and it's completely minimized compared to the way it used to be, both horizontally and vertically. You can still expand it and see all the items kind of similar to the way it used to be. But even in this view, it's kind of compressed. Prior to the vertical navigation clarity component that we're using now, we were using tree, and that tree had all the items, most of the time, all the items completely expanded. So there was, I think at some point I counted that it was possible to see like 42 items at once, even more depending how many plugins you had. But so with the current vertical navigation component, only one of the groups is expanded at a time. So that saves a lot of vertical space, I'm sorry. And then when it's collapsed, it saves even more. It basically, when you collapse it, all your navigation is put all the way to the left, and saving the space for things that are important, like, deployments view and things like that. So the whole idea is just to almost put navigation out of the way, and we were not sure which view should be default. And I think on Monday we decided that collapsed view should be default, that we can try for now and maybe see how it works and get some feedback on it. So if you guys have any feedback, this is geared a little towards more experienced users, because you can't see all the items. You can still see them if you mouse over all the groups, but it's a little harder to access it, and it's a little harder to find what it is. The other difference in behavior, if navigation is collapsed, you can run out of the items. I don't know how Zoom is going to do this, but if I make this window smaller, kind of simulating adding more items, you will see that There's no scroll bar, obviously this is so tiny, so the items just expand. And we may improve this in future a little more and add ability to access the items that get hidden, but for now they're just disappearing. And I mean, I think even this is okay for now, because if you see that items are gone, you can always go to expanded state and scroll down to access some of the stuff you're missing in that view. So that is in a short, the new navigation. The other big changes, the namespaces drop-down is now moved to the right, close to the context selector, and they kind of look almost the same. So I think this is a good way to position the filtering. So with this change, everything that's related to filtering by labels, by namespaces, and by context is kind of close together in the top of the view. And we may add some more stuff here in the future. And this filtering will change. I think Ross started working on that too. That may change in the future. So the one peculiar thing without namespaces being visible all the time is if you have actions that are a namespace specific, like for example, if you show all the namespaces, this turns into, it's not the drop down anymore. And then if you, let's say you get into one of the namespaces, it gets that selection. So that's how it works right now. And also you can see that those breadcrumbs will give you better ability to move back and forth too. So the whole idea with this change and some changes coming in the future is that to, as much as we can, we'll put the links inside, move the navigation to the side, and give filtering at the top. So that's pretty much it. Any questions?
I gotta say, I like the default of having the icons there to the left. Gives you more space to see what's actually important.
Exactly.
And as you said, you can always expand. So yeah, that looks really good.
Yeah, and also you can quickly change the light and dark mode right here at the bottom. So yeah, I think it's a good step in the, towards a little better user experience.
Yeah, I had a thought about all namespaces. It might. I don't know if it's the right word for it in this case, because all namespaces might imply one day where we want to see objects in all namespaces. Yeah. And maybe non-namespace doesn't sound quite right either, but there should be something in there to say it's like a cluster overview level and not necessarily all the namespaces.
Right. That initially I thought we should hide it or disable it, but then I think it would be better if we show something. So if we can come up with a better name, I'm all for it. It's kind of hard to distill it in 1 or 2 words. So if you have any suggestions.
Yeah, this is great. One of the things that it's a really simple thing, but one of the things that I really like is when you're in the cluster overview and you select something that then takes you to a namespace link, it updates the namespace you're in and as well as reflects it in the menu. That's like a it was always, even before, I think it worked before, but it wasn't very clear that was happening, and now it's very clear that that's what happens. I like it a lot.
Right. I think there's still a few small issues with the selection. That's the other change that we made, that you should always be able to see where you are based on the selection on the left. But I think that doesn't work so well both ways, so we may need to improve that a little bit.
Great, thank you.
Sure thing.
All right, do we have any other questions or concerns for today? Doesn't look like it. All right. Thank you everyone for joining today. A pleasure as always. Have a fantastic rest of your week, everyone. And we'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a good one.